Rain clung to everything in downtown Seattle by the time Claire Donovan reached Northbridge Tower. It was the thin kind of rain that slipped past umbrellas and soaked into seams more mist than storm. It turned the 40 stories of glass ahead of her into a blurred mirror of gray sky and scattered office lights. Above the revolving doors, the white letters of Northbridge Labs shone bright and clean. Her name had never been on the sign. For years, she had not needed it to be. Claire stepped under the shallow concrete overhang. The air smelled of wet stone and citrus cleaner. People moved through the revolving doors in short bursts, shoulders hunched, coffee cups steaming in their hands. ID badges bounced against zip-hod jackets. The scanners at the gates blinked an easy green. She slid her own badge from her pocket. The plastic was warm from her grip edges worn smooth. The photo showed a younger version of herself, hair pulled back, eyes sharp, mouth set. CEO, the line under her name read. She walked to the turnstiles without looking at the security desk. The badge reader waited a small green light on its face. Behind her, the revolving doors sighed open and shut, letting in the hiss of nearby traffic and the rich smell of espresso from the truck at the corner. Claire pressed her badge to the reader. Red, one flat beep. She frowned and tried again slower. Red, the same thin electronic refusal. Someone behind her exhaled impatiently. A man in a rain jacket stepped to the next lane, tapped his badge and moved through without breaking stride. His gate slid open with a soft click, green light blinking. Ma'am. The voice came from the security desk, low, calm. Claire kept the badge against the reader a moment longer, as if time might change code, then let her hand fall and turned. The guard stood behind the desk with his hands resting loosely on the counter. Early 40s, she guessed. Dark hair cut short gray at the temples. Navy uniform. A dented steel thermos uncapped near his elbow. His eyes met hers and stayed there, steady, curious. Your access is not active anymore, he said. I checked the list this morning. I am going to have to ask you to step away from the gates. The words were simple. They still felt like impact. I work here, Claire said. Her voice came out hoarse. You can check again. He turned to the monitor. Columns of names and numbers reflected faintly on the glass in front of him. His fingers moved across the keyboard in slow, practiced strokes. What is your last name, he asked. Donovan. Claire Donovan. He typed, watched the screen. A small crease formed between his brows. It shows deactivated, he said. Yesterday afternoon. I am sorry. I cannot override it. The badge felt suddenly lighter between her fingers, flimsy like a hotel key that had timed out. Claire glanced down at the photo. 31 eyes, bright jaw set, as if no door could stay closed to her for long. That has to be a mistake, she said, but there was no weight behind the words. Behind her, the revolving doors kept turning. Each spin drew in another pocket of cold air and the smell of wet wool coffee city air. Outside, a barista called names over the hum of traffic. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She pulled it out on reflex. The screen lit her face in pale blue. Missid call Attorney Lee. New voicemail board chair. A row of new emails stacked beneath subject lines thick with capital letters. Urgent. Response needed. Media request. A text from an unknown number flashed at the top. We need a statement before noon. Her pulse kicked out of habit. For years, a screen full of alerts had meant she was necessary, that there was a problem only she could fix. She did not open any of them. Her thumb scrolled almost on its own. Names blurred into gray bars. Sentences reduced themselves to shapes. At the very top, one thread stayed pinned. A small circle with the letter M, Mia. The last text filled most of the screen. Blue bubble. Time stamp 11:42 p.m. You always say family comes first. You just never show up. Claire read it once, then again. The chill under her coat had nothing to do with the rain. Mia had said softer versions of that for years. This line held no softness. Ma'am, the guard's voice reached her again. She realized she had drifted a half step closer to the gate's body, moving toward the path it knew best. Her fingers had closed around the badge until the corner bit into her palm. You really cannot be past this point, he said. Not without clearance. He did not sound angry. He sounded tired, careful. Claire looked past him. Beyond the desk and the metal gates, she could see the elevator bank's brushed steel catching the overhead lights. The hallway beyond that, where framed patents lined the walls. She knew exactly how many steps from the elevators to her old office, how the floor creaked in one spot near the corner window. She had missed birthdays for that hallway, dinners, a funeral, first days of school that belonged to other people's children, and one that had belonged to her sister. The badge dug deeper into her hand. a square of plastic that now opened nothing. "I built this place," she said. The words came out quieter than she expected, almost conversational. The guard studied her for a beat. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition maybe from headlines on a phone. "I believe you," he said, "but I cannot let you through. I need this job. I have a son to take care of." Her phone buzzed again in her other hand, an insistent little tremor. Claire pressed the side button. The sound stopped. The notification shrank to a thin bar at the top of the screen. She held the button longer. The screen went black. For a moment, the lobby felt strangely still. No vibration, no fresh subject lines marching into view, only the soft slap of wet shoes on tile, the low murmur of voices, the faint drum of rain on glass. She slipped the dead phone into one pocket, the badge into the other. Then she stepped away from the gates, out from under the concrete lip, and back into the fine, clinging rain, leaving the blinking green lights and the open doors on the other side of the glass. Claire did not go far. She walked to the edge of the plaza, where the concrete turned to slick sidewalk, then stopped. Cars crept past wipers, dragging tires, whispering over wet asphalt. The coffee truck hissed steam behind her. Somewhere a gull cried over the harbor. With her phone off and the badge dead weight in her pocket, there was nothing left to hold on to out here. The world felt strangely quiet. No calendar alerts, no vibrating insistence from a life she no longer occupied. Her gaze drifted back to the tower. 40 stories of glass and steel rose above the street, each tall window a rectangle of dim light in the gray morning. Conference rooms, offices, the boardroom on 37 with its polished walnut table and wall of screens. Even from here, Claire could picture that room too clearly. 3 days earlier, she had stood at the head of that table, not on the sidewalk. The memory came with the clarity of a knife. The rain had been harder that morning, streaking the windows in long diagonal lines. The city beyond looked washed out skyscrapers dissolving into low clouds. Inside the boardroom was all muted carpet and expensive chairs. A row of bottled water stood in a neat line within easy reach. Claire had taken her usual place, fingertips braced on the back of the chair in front of her. The wall screen showed the Northbridge logo on a field of deep blue, waiting for the presentation to begin. Most of the board members sat already murmuring to one another, checking phones, flipping through printed decks. The air carried the faint smell of printer toner and coffee and someone's perfume, sharp and floral. Grant Keller walked in with 2 thick folders under his arm and a tablet in hand. He wore one of his quieter suits, charcoal and pale blue shirt, no tie. His dark hair was combed back too carefully. Claire watched the way his eyes avoided hers until the last second, the way his smile did not quite reach one side of his face. "Morning," he said. She gave him a short nod. They had fought 2 nights ago in her office, the kind of fight that simmered instead of exploded. She had not spoken to him since. The chair of the board cleared his throat. Conversations faded. "Let us get started," he said. "We have a serious matter to address." Serious. That word again. It had been in the email summoning her here. It sat heavy on the center of the table now. The screen shifted. No longer the logo, but a spreadsheet. Rows and columns, numbers, and small black font. Red circles drawn around several entries. A series of wire transfers, all labeled vendor payments. Grant tapped his tablet. The transfers zoomed in, filling the screen. "These transactions came to my attention during our routine internal audit last month," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. He had pitched to investors with that same tone and cadence for years. "They originate from our main operating account." Claire slid into her chair. She scanned the numbers, hoping to feel recognition. Vendor names, amounts, dates. Nothing familiar. She straightened in her seat. "I do not approve vendor payments," she said. "You know that." "I know," he said. "That is why this concerned me." Another tap on his tablet. A different document appeared, a screenshot of an approval screen from their internal system. Her name in the upper right corner. Claire Donovan. Her credentials in a small font. Approved by. He swiped through several more. Different amounts, different dates, same login. "We trace the access back to your account," he said. "Your credentials were used to authorize these transfers." Claire felt heat gathering under her collar, then draining away, leaving something cold and tight behind. "That is not possible," she said. "I do not even know these vendor names." A board member on her left leaned forward, glasses low on her nose. "Claire, are you saying these documents are fabricated?" "I am saying I have never seen them before," this second Claire replied. The words sounded thinner than she wanted. "Someone must have used my credentials, or the system was compromised." The chair lifted one of the folders Grant had brought. He opened it and slid a printed packet across the table. Claire took it. Email printouts, copies of authorizations, screens from their bank portal, each one stamped with a date-time user ID, her user ID. A copy of an email sat on top addressed to the finance team instructing them to expedite a payment. It had her signature line at the bottom, her name, her title, her phone number. The language was formal, clipped in a way that mirrored her usual style. It looked like her. She studied the header. The sending address was correct. The time was a night she remembered well for a different reason. She had been flying to New York, cramming for a meeting about a new product launch. "I did not write this," she said quietly. Grant watched her across the table, eyes unreadable. A small muscle twitched near his jaw. "We have had an outside firm review our logs," the chair said. "There is no sign of an external breach. All signs point to internal misuse of access." Misuse. The word hung between them. "About $15 million have been diverted so far," Grant added, glancing at his tablet. "We have traced the funds to several accounts connected to a holding company in Delaware. That holding company lists you as its primary officer." He flipped to another document, slid it toward her. A registration form. The name of the entity jumped out first. Cedar Cove Strategies. The listed address was a mailbox in a generic office park. Below that, under officer information, her name appeared again. Claire Donovan. A shaky signature at the bottom that looked almost like hers. Her fingers went numb. "This is not mine," she said. "None of this is mine." The room had gone very quiet. Outside, rain streaked sideways across the windows. The city beyond blurred into gray and blue. One of the older board members tapped a pen against his legal pad. "Claire, the optics on this are very difficult. We have investors calling already. Reporters, too." The chair folded his hands. "Regardless of how this happened, we need to protect the company. We are initiating a formal investigation. Until that is complete, the board is asking you to step aside as chief executive." The words settled slowly, as if passing through water. "Step aside," she repeated. Her mouth felt dry. "You are removing me." "We prefer not to characterize it that way," the chair said. "It is temporary while we sort this out." Grant had not said much in the last few minutes. His eyes were fixed on the table on a point near his water bottle. When he finally looked up, there was something almost sympathetic in his expression. "Claire," he said, "this is the only way to keep Northbridge from imploding. If we fight the board on this, we lose everything." "We," she echoed. The pronoun tasted bitter. "You brought this to them." "I had to," he replied. "If I had not, someone else would have." The vote took less than 10 minutes. There were numbers, formal motions, phrases pulled from bylaws. 7 voices in favor, 2 against. She did not bother to track which 2. Her badge felt heavier than usual as she clipped it from her blazer and set it on the table. Afterward, a representative from Human Resources met her outside the boardroom. The woman's name escaped her. She had interviewed dozens of people in this building. The faces blurred now. "If you give us a few minutes, we can have your personal items packed from your office," the woman said. Her tone was careful, neutral. "We will send them to your home address." "That is not necessary," Claire said. "I will take them now." The woman hesitated, then gestured toward 2 uniformed guards waiting by the elevator bank. "We have to follow protocol," she said. "They will escort you." The walk from the boardroom to her office on 35 had never felt long until that morning. Each step clicked against the polished floor. Heads turned in open workspaces as she passed. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. A technician pretended to be absorbed in a monitor that was clearly on the lock screen. Inside her office, the view still stretched wide from the corner windows. The bay lay steel gray under low clouds. Container ships crawled along the horizon. On her desk, there were 2 coffee mugs, a family photo in a silver frame, a succulent plant that her assistant watered once a week. Her assistant was not at her desk. A cardboard box sat in her place, half full of framed certificates and books. Claire picked up the photo. Mia at 14 squinting into lake sunlight. Their grandmother Eleanor in a wide-brimmed hat, one arm around each of them. The picture had been taken on a summer weekend. Claire had joined late and left early. She had insisted on bringing her laptop to the dock. She set the frame in the box. The guards waited by the door as she took off her company jacket with the Northbridge logo on the sleeve and draped it over the back of the chair. She left the notebooks, the old sticky notes, the pens in their cup. None of that felt like hers. The elevator ride down was silent. One of the guards watched the numbers descend floor by floor. The other stared straight ahead. Claire watched her own reflection in the brushed steel wall, pale, expressionless. On the ground floor, the doors opened to the same lobby she had crossed that morning. The same buzz of voices, the same scent of cleaner and coffee. No one looked up as she walked past the reception desk cardboard box in her arms. An exit door opened with a soft click. Outside, rain waited. By evening, she was back in her penthouse, standing in front of a wall of glass that looked out over the city and the black line of the Sound beyond. The living room was silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint hiss of traffic several stories below. Her laptop sat on the kitchen counter screen, open to an email from the bank. Account activity temporarily frozen pending review. Attached was a list of accounts she had not even realized were connected to her name. Claire closed the lid and let her hand rest on top of it for a moment. The surface was cool under her palm. Lights from other high-rises blinked across the water. In one window far below, she could see the outline of a dining table, people moving around it, passing dishes, leaning close to talk. The scene blurred as fresh rain began to track down the glass between them. Her phone vibrated over and over on the counter beside her. She ignored it until the battery icon turned red. Hours later, when Eva opened her apartment door a few blocks away, Claire was on the threshold with a single suitcase and the silver frame tucked under one arm. "Wow," Eva said softly. "You look awful." "I had a day," Claire replied. Eva stepped aside to let her in. The studio was small and warm and cluttered, nothing like the cool, curated spaces Claire was used to. A fold-out couch took up most of the main room, draped with a faded quilt. A plant in the corner leaned hard toward the window. A string of cheap fairy lights threw a soft glow across the walls. "You can have the couch," Eva said. "I will clear the table for your stuff." That was how the penthouse turned into a suitcase against the wall and a spot on a lumpy mattress in a room that smelled faintly of takeout and laundry detergent. Claire lay awake long after Eva's breathing evened out in the loft above. Light from the street slipped in around the edges of the cheap blinds striping the ceiling. In the dark, she could see the shape of her laptop bag near the door, the edge of the silver picture frame peeking out. There was another laptop 3 miles away in a locked office on 35, the one that held photos she had not backed up, the one sitting behind glass and deactivated badge readers. Rain ticked softly against the window as she stared up at the ceiling and thought about that closed door. Morning came in pieces. First as a gray brightness behind Eva's thin blinds, then as the sound of the upstairs neighbor's shower through the pipes, and finally as the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchenette. Claire woke with the feeling that someone had stacked concrete on her chest. For a moment she did not know where she was. The ceiling was low and textured, not the smooth white of the penthouse. The quilt bunched around her smelled like detergent and a hint of old incense. The springs under the fold-out mattress pressed in all the wrong places. Then memory settled. Boardroom, rain, box, couch. She pushed herself upright. Her shoulder throbbed from the unfamiliar bed. Eva moved around the tiny kitchen in wool socks, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. "I have to work in an hour," Eva said. "There is cereal, or toast, or you can go for something that tastes like food." "I am fine," Claire said. Her voice sounded unused. "I should get going anyway." She showered quickly using Eva's mint shampoo and a towel that had seen better years. In the bathroom mirror, her face looked older than it had 3 days ago. The skin under her eyes had gone sallow. Her hair, still damp, curled slightly at the ends. She dressed in jeans and a plain black sweater from her suitcase. No blazer, no heels. Her only shoes were a pair of worn sneakers she had not put on in months. Her phone lay on the small table where she had dropped it the night before. The charging cable stuck out of the wall like an offered hand. Claire plugged it in, watched the screen flicker to life, then dim again with the battery icon pulsing. As soon as it had enough power, the notifications began to stack, one buzzing after another. She watched the first wave appear. Attorney Lee, unknown number, press, incoming calls that had failed while the phone was off. Texts from numbers she did not recognize, full of links and questions and fragments of concern. She held down the power button until the screen went black again. "Big day," Ava asked from behind her, trying for lightness. "I just need to pick up a laptop," Claire said. "I left it in my office." She did not say the rest, the one with the only copies of certain photos. Her mother on the last Thanksgiving they had all spent together. Mia at 8 with missing front teeth holding up a crooked drawing. Eleanor in her tiny backyard with tomato vines climbing the fence. On the sidewalk outside, the air bit colder than the day before. The rain had paused, leaving a sheen on every surface. Puddles sat in the uneven concrete, catching the pale sky. Claire jammed her hands into her coat pockets and started downhill toward the waterfront. The city moved around her on its own rhythm. Cyclists in bright jackets threaded between cars. A woman walked a golden retriever that stopped to sniff every tree. Delivery trucks blocked half a lane, hazard lights blinking. From 3 blocks away, she could see the top of Northbridge Tower over the lower buildings. The glass caught what little light there was and scattered it in muted shards. At the plaza, the coffee truck was already there, a small crowd forming around it. The smell of roasted beans cut through the chill. Someone laughed loudly near the curb, a harsh, sudden sound that made Claire flinch. She went back under the concrete overhang where yesterday she had stood with her badge in her hand and felt the ground tilt. The revolving doors spun steadily. Employees flowed in and out, a stream of dark coats and laptop bags. The badge scanners on the gates blinked patient green. The security desk looked the same. The man behind it did not. Yesterday she had barely registered his features. Only the fact of him another obstacle between her and something she wanted. Today she saw him more clearly. He sat on a high stool, 1 foot planted on the floor. The navy shirt of his uniform fit broad shoulders. The lines at the corners of his eyes suggested a life lived outdoors before he took a job under fluorescent lights. His hair, dark clipped short, showed threads of gray above his ears. He watched her approach. His eyes were dark and steady, not guarded, not welcoming, simply present. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Claire replied. Her badge was still in her pocket. She did not take it out this time. "I was here yesterday," she said. "My access was deactivated." "I remember," he said, "Ms. Donovan." The fact that he knew her name landed somewhere between her chest and her throat. "I left a laptop upstairs," she said, "in my old office. It is personal, photos, files, that kind of thing. I cannot replace it." He rested his hands on the counter, fingers laced. "I understand," he said, "but the access flag has not changed. I checked when I came on shift. I still cannot buzz you in." "I am not asking you to ignore the system," Claire said. "I am asking you to use a bit of judgment. It would take 10 minutes. The words came sharper than she intended. They carried the edge she put into investor calls and tense negotiations. His expression did not harden, but it cooled slightly. He glanced at the monitor beside him, then back up at her. "Judgment is exactly what keeps me from doing that," he said. "They sent out a memo yesterday. Your name was on it. No access, no exceptions. There are cameras all over this lobby. If I let you through, I am on the footage. I lose my job." The truth of that landed. She let her gaze flick to the black half-spheres tucked into the ceiling corners, the small lenses and smoked domes above the gates. "How long have you worked here?" she asked. "About 3 years," he said, "since they moved into this building." She tried to remember if she had ever looked at him before this week. She had walked past this desk every weekday morning for years. She had signed security budgets, approved vendor changes, forwarded maintenance requests. She could not conjure an image of his face from any of those days. "Do you like it?" she asked. His mouth quirked at one corner. "It is a job," he said. "Most days that is enough." He hesitated a fraction of a second before adding, "I have a kid. They like it when the rent is paid." He said it lightly, but the words carried weight. "I am not trying to put you in a bad position," Claire said. "I just need that computer." "What is on it?" he asked. "I have been my whiskey nest." "Pictures," she said. "My mother, my sister. I never backed them up." That was not the whole story. The laptop also held pitch decks, contracts, years of revisions and strategies, documents that now belonged to Northbridge, not to her. The truth she had offered was the truest part. He studied her face for a moment. "I can go up," he said at last. "If your account is locked, mine is not. If you give me the floor and office number, I can bring the laptop down to you. That way no one sees you in restricted space, and I do not lose my badge." Claire had not expected him to bend at all. The simple offer opened something inside her that she did not want to examine. "If you could," she said. Her voice thinned on the last word. "It is on 35, corner office south side. There should be a black backpack under the desk. Laptop is in there." 35 south corner, he repeated, as if memorizing a code. "All right." He reached for his own badge clipped neatly to his belt. When he tapped it against the gate scanner, the light flashed green. "I need you to wait outside," he said, "for the protocol. If any of the managers come through, they do not need to see you standing at my desk." He said it gently, not as an order, more like a suggestion meant to be in her favor. "Of course," Claire said. She stepped back from the counter. People flowed around her, some glancing up, doing a quick double take, before looking away, suddenly fascinated with their phones. She caught fragments of whispered words as they passed. "That is her. I saw the article. Embezzlement, right?" None of the words attached to their speakers. They hovered in the air, half-formed, then dissolved. Claire turned away from the desk and walked through the revolving doors to the outside again. The rain had started back up in her absence, a fine drizzle that beaded on her hair and eyelashes. She moved to the broad concrete steps just beyond the overhang and sat down without thinking about the damp. From this angle, Northbridge Tower looked even taller. The glass rose above her in a sheer plane. She could see her faint reflection in it, her face blurred, layered over the distorted shapes of people moving on the other side. Her hands rested on her knees. She flexed her fingers slowly. They were cold. The fabric of her jeans soaked through where it met the steps. She tried to focus on the simple sequence of events. Guard goes up, guard gets bag, guard comes back. She takes the laptop and leaves. That was all this was. An errand. Her chest did not seem to agree. A tightness gathered beneath her ribs, small at first, then more insistent. Her throat prickled. She blinked against the sting in her eyes, but the damp there was not from the drizzle. Claire clenched her jaw and lifted her gaze to the top of the tower, to the corner where her office window would be. From here, it was just another square of pale glass in a grid of many. She drew in a slow breath that did not quite make it all the way down. On the other side of the glass doors, she could see the security desk. The guard in navy moved away from it, heading toward the elevator bank thermos forgotten on the counter. He disappeared from view. Claire stayed on the cold steps, rain clinging to her hair, the pulse in her throat beating faster against the collar of her sweater. The first sob surprised her. It arrived as a small fracture in her breath, a hitch she thought she could swallow. She pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth, squeezed her eyes shut, willing it away. The second came harder. Her lungs tightened, as if someone had reached inside her chest and closed a hand around them. Air left in a sharp sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a gasp. Claire dropped her head into her hands. The concrete step was cold under her. The drizzle pinned strands of hair to her cheeks. Her palms met her face, and suddenly there was no holding anything back. Tears pushed up without order, hot against cold skin. Her shoulders jerked with each short, useless attempt to pull herself together. The sounds she made did not feel like ones a person in control produced. They were raw, loud enough that a man walking past on the sidewalk slowed, hesitated, then kept going. Claire had cried in the last 3 days, but not like this. She had cried in a bathroom stall on the 37th floor, standing over a sink with perfect lighting and automatic faucets. She had cried in the shower at the penthouse, hot water washing the salt away before it could dry. Those moments had felt contained, manageable, tucked into spaces where no one could see. Here on the front steps of the building, she had given herself to there was no container. Her breath came in sharp pulls that did not quite fill her chest. Her vision blurred. The tower in front of her turned to a shifting smear of gray and glass. She was dimly aware of people moving around her, giving the kind of wide berth reserved for street preachers' arguments and anyone whose grief spilled out too visibly in public. She did not know how long she sat like that. The rain stayed thin and steady. Her jeans grew heavier where they soaked through. A chill settled along her spine. Footsteps sounded on the concrete behind her, slow even. Ms. Donovan. The voice came from her left, a little above her. Claire dragged her hands away from her face. For a second she saw only shapes and color. Then the guard from the desk resolved into focus beside her, a black backpack hanging from one hand. He had left his cap somewhere. Droplets dotted his hair where the drizzle had caught it. In his other hand he carried a familiar steel thermos. "I found your office," he said. His gaze flicked to her wet cheeks, then back to some neutral point over her shoulder, giving her space. "The bag was under the desk, like you said." He set the backpack down on the step between them. "Thank you," Claire managed. The words came out rough. She reached for the strap fingers, clumsy, and pulled the bag closer as if someone might change their mind and take it back. She expected him to leave then, to nod, retreat to his post, and let her finish falling apart alone. Instead, he hesitated. His eyes moved over her face again, more carefully this time. Whatever he saw there seemed to settle something in him. "Hold on," he said quietly. He unscrewed the lid of the thermos, poured dark coffee into the metal cap, and handed it to her. The warmth seeped into her fingers before the smell even reached her. "Careful, it is hot," he said. She wrapped both hands around the makeshift cup. The heat bit at the chill in her skin, a small, steady burn. She took a sip. The coffee was strong and slightly bitter, with a hint of something sweet behind it. "Thank you," she said again. "You are welcome." He sat down. He did not ask if he could. He just lowered himself onto the step a respectful distance away, boots planted, elbows resting loosely on his knees. He did not look directly at her, which felt like a kindness. For a while they stayed like that. The city moved around them indifferent. The revolving doors whispered. A bus sighed to a stop at the corner. Someone's laughter floated from the coffee truck, then faded. Claire's breathing slowed in uneven increments. The sobs tapered into small aftershocks, then into silent tremors in her chest. She wiped the back of her hand under each eye, aware that mascara had probably left streaks she could not see. The guard reached into his pocket and pulled out a packet of tissues. He extended it in her direction without comment. She huffed out a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been so shredded. "You carry these for crying women on your steps?" she asked. Her voice was still rough, but steadier. "I carry these for myself," he said. "Allergy season around here is no joke. You just got lucky." There was the smallest thread of dry humor in his tone. It loosened something in her that the heat from the coffee had only begun to touch. She took a tissue, then another, and tried to repair the worst of the damage. "I am sorry," she said. "I do not usually fall apart in front of strangers." "You are not falling apart," he replied. "You are sitting in the rain with bad coffee. Big difference." She glanced at the cup in her hands. "It is not bad," she said. "It is hospital cafeteria level at best," he countered. "But it is hot, which helps." She let the warmth sit in her mouth before swallowing this time, finding comfort in the simple physical sensation. "You were up there long enough that I thought maybe you had forgotten," she said, nodding at the backpack. "I did not forget," he said. "Had to wait for a maintenance guy to finish with the elevator. They are watching my access logs this week like a hawk. I needed a reason to be on 35. "You lying for me now?" she asked, more out of habit than accusation. He shrugged slightly. "I delivered a notice to the floor about a fire drill," he said. "Then I picked up an unclaimed item from an office. All technically true." She studied his profile. His nose had a faint bump along the bridge, the kind earned from some long-ago impact. A small scar sat near his jawline, pale against his skin. Up close, the threads of gray at his temples stood out more clearly. "Thank you," she said again, and this time the words landed with more weight. "I know what it costs to risk rules around here." He tilted his head. "I know what it costs to lose a job," he said. "I am not trying to do that." This felt like something I could still do and sleep at night. He hesitated, then held out his hand in a formal little gesture that did not quite match the concrete step setting. "Luis Alvarez," he said. "Since we are past the stage of you yelling at me, we might as well know each other's names." Claire blinked, then set the coffee cap carefully on the step to free one hand. "Claire," she said, "you already knew the last part." "I did," he said. "The news helped with that." The words sat there plain. He did not rush to fill the silence after them. "You read it?" she asked. "Some of it," he said. "It is hard not to, when every other notification on my phone is about the building I guard." "And what do you think?" she asked, surprising herself. "Do you think I did it?" He took a moment with that. His gaze stayed forward on the street as a cyclist passed by with a delivery box strapped to the back of his bike. "I think people with a lot of power make a lot of mistakes," he said. "Some of them are criminal, some of them are just human. The internet is not very good at telling those apart." "That is not an answer," she said. "It is the only one I have without knowing you," he replied. "Headlines are rarely the whole story." The line was not meant to comfort, and it did not. It did, however, keep her from spinning in the space those words occupied. They sat in another stretch of quiet. The rain softened, becoming more of a mist. The stone under them stayed unforgiving. "I was not always doing this," Luis said at last. Claire glanced over at him. "Security, you mean?" she asked. He nodded. "I used to work in finance," he said. "Big firm in Chicago. Suits, red eyes, 3 flights in a week. You know the type." "I do," she said. "We probably pitched to the same people." He huffed a small sound. "Probably," he said. "I spent more time with spreadsheets than with my own family. At the time, I told myself it was worth it." He rubbed his palms together once as if remembering the feel of something no longer there. "My wife got sick," he continued. "Cancer. We did the whole thing. Specialist trials, second opinions. I kept working the same hours. Told myself it was what I had to do. Someone had to keep the insurance, pay the bills, make sure our son did not worry about money on top of everything else." He paused, jaw tightening briefly. "They told us she was in remission. Then they told us she was not. I was not in the room for the second part. I was in an airport arguing with a client over a deal fee. The rain had almost stopped now. Drops clung to the railings and to the threads of his hair. When she died, he said, I thought that was the bottom. Funerals, casseroles from neighbors, everyone telling you to be strong. After a while, they stop calling. You go back to work. You push harder, because if you slow down, you have to feel something." Claire listened without interrupting. The turn of his voice did not invite pity, only attention. "My son was 7, Louise said. Noah. The school had them draw pictures of their families for some project. He brought his home in his backpack. It sat on the counter for 2 days before I really looked at it." He swallowed. "There was his mom," he said, "and him, and our dog. House in the background, son in the corner, you know, kid stuff. He let out a breath that felt heavier than the air around them. "I asked him where I was," Luis said. He looked at me like I had asked the dumbest question in the world. Then he said, "You are not in the picture because you are never really here." The sentence settled over them, simple and brutal. A car drove by, sending a thin wave of water up against the curb. Claire looked down at the coffee cap between them. A bit of steam still rose from the surface. "He was right," Luis said. "I was home sometimes, physically, but I was in my email or on calls or thinking about the next trip. I was a ghost that paid the bills." He pressed his hands together, fingers interlocked. "The next Monday, he said I quit. Walked into the managing director's office, handed in my badge, and told him I was done. Everyone thought I had lost my mind." "Had you?" Claire asked softly. "Maybe," he said. "All I know is I could breathe for the first time in years. I moved us out here, took this job. It is boring most of the time. The pay is nothing compared to what I used to make. But I walk Noah to school. I sit at his games. When he draws a family picture now, I am in it." The way he said that last part put a pressure behind Claire's eyes again, sharper than before. She thought of the text sitting at the top of her messages. Mia's words. "You just never show up." She had told herself for so long that she was doing this for them. For Mia, for Eleanor, for the ghost of their mother. That the missed dinners and canceled trips were small temporary sacrifices on the way to a future where no one would have to worry about money again. "How old is he now?" she asked. 13, Luis said. "Knows more about marine biology than I do about my own job." He turned his head enough to meet her gaze. His eyes were dark, not soft, but not hard either. "I know what it looks like from the inside," he said. "When you are always busy, it feels like proof you matter. When you stop, it can feel like there is nothing left." Claire considered the tower in front of them. The windows reflected a washed-out version of the sky. Somewhere in there, someone else was already sitting at her old desk. "If I stopped," she said quietly, more to herself than to him, "I do not know what would be left of me." Luis picked up the thermos cap, now almost empty, and tipped the last of the coffee into his mouth. He stood stretching his legs, then looked down at her. "Maybe you find out," he said. "You have the bag now. That is something." He tapped the backpack lightly with the toe of his boot, then stepped back toward the doors. "I should get in there," he said. "They get nervous if the desk sits empty." Claire nodded. "Luis," she said, testing his name. "Thank you. For the laptop. For the story. For not pretending you did not see me crying on your steps." "Everybody cries on these steps eventually," he said. "They just usually do it inside their heads." He started toward the revolving doors, then paused and turned back. "If you ever want to talk about any of it," he said, "I am here most days. Not much else to do but watch badge lights." She watched him disappear into the building, the doors spinning closed behind him. The backpack sat heavy against her leg. She slid the laptop out just enough to see the edge of its case. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the brushed metal. Her fingers hovered over the zipper, then withdrew. She pulled her phone from her pocket instead. The black screen stared back. For a long moment she simply held it, feeling its weight in her hand, the quiet inside it. Then with her thumb, she pressed the power button until the glass lit up. The screen woke up with a white flash, then settled into familiar icons. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the notifications arrived in a rush. Missed calls stacked at the top, one after another. Attorney Lee. Unknown. Office number she recognized from the 37th floor. A news outlet. Another. Beneath them, texts bloomed in quick succession. Some with links, some with clipped questions. "Is this true? Call me Claire. We can manage this if you respond." Her name appeared in several of the preview lines alongside the words fraud and investigation. She inhaled through her nose and let the breath out slowly. The bar at the top of the screen filled with small badges, red circles with white numbers, email, voicemail messaging apps she had forgotten she had installed. At the very top, pinned, so it would never slide down the screen with the rest, sat the thread with Mia. Claire tapped it with her thumb. The thread opened to a long column of blue and gray bubbles. Jokes, logistics, half conversations from months past. The last message from Mia was still the one she had read in the lobby. "You always say family comes first. You just never show up." Underneath it, the gray word delivered sat alone. No reply in blue beneath it. No second chance to soften its edge. Claire stared until the letters blurred. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, then moved to the call icon instead. She hit it before she could talk herself into waiting for a better moment. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Claire imagined the call going to voicemail. Mia's recorded voice brighter than her text, asking people to leave a message. Claire had left her share of those and never followed up. On the 4th ring, the line clicked. What Mia said. The single word was flat, no greeting, no attempt at politeness. "It is me," Claire said. Her own voice sounded unfamiliar in her ears. "Mia, I know who it is." A soft rustle came through the earpiece. Fabric against fabric. "What do you want?" The question was not new. Mia had asked it in different ways over the years, usually when Claire called with a favor to ask or a schedule to propose. This time the answer was slippery. "I wanted to call you back," Claire said, "about your text." A beat of silence. "You waited a whole day," Mia said. "How generous." Claire blinked at the street in front of her. A man in a suit hurried past, hunched over his own phone collar, turned up against the mist. "You are right," Claire said. "I should have called last night. I did not. That is on me." She heard Mia exhale. The sound crackled slightly through the speaker. "That is the thing," Mia said. "It is always later with you. After the meeting, after the flight, after the crisis. Somehow later never comes." "I know," Claire said. The two words felt small compared to the weight of the years they were supposed to cover. "I saw the articles," Mia added. "Everyone did. My roommate shoved her phone in my face. It is weird when your sister is on the news for possibly going to prison." "I am not going to prison," Claire said automatically. "Sure," Mia said, "if you say so." The sarcasm was razor thin, but there was something underneath it. Fear maybe wrapped in resignation. Claire leaned forward, elbows on her knees, phone pressed tighter to her ear. "I am sorry," she said. The word tasted different this time. Heavy, simple. Not just about the last 24 hours, about all of it. "I missed too much." On the other end of the line, she could hear muffled announcements in the background. A voice over a speaker. Footsteps. A squeak like a wheel that needed oil. "Where are you?" Claire asked. The question slipped out before she could stop it. There was a pause. For a moment, Claire thought Mia might hang up. "Harborview," Mia said finally. Claire sat up straighter. "The hospital," she asked. "Why are you at the hospital?" Mia inhaled sharply, like she was bracing against something pressing inward. "Grandma," she said. Her voice tightened around the word. "She had chest pain last night. She called an ambulance. I got here as soon as I could. They took her up to cardiac. They said it was a mild heart attack." The sound of a monitor beeped faintly through the line, steady and distant. "She is stable," Mia continued. "They are doing tests, talking about maybe putting in a stent. I do not know. The doctor explained it, but there was a lot, and I have not really slept." The words came faster now, like if she stopped talking, she might not be able to start again. "Why did no one call me?" Claire asked. She hated how brittle that sounded as soon as it was out. "We did," Mia said. "Grandma tried your number. It went straight to voicemail. I texted. You were busy, remember?" The text, blue on white, delivered. Claire closed her eyes. "Is anyone there with you?" she asked. There was a small hitch in Mia's breath. "Just me," she said. "They limit visitors upstairs. I have been in the waiting room mostly. Downstairs at the cafe when they kick me out. Grandma tells me to go back to campus, but I am not leaving her here alone." The idea of Mia sitting in some hard plastic chair with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead made something twist in Claire's chest. "I am coming," Claire said. The words surprised her by how solid they felt. No caveats, no "if I can." "Which wing are you in?" "Claire, it is fine," Mia said automatically, like it was a reflex. "You have your own stuff happening. Lawyers and statements and whatever CEOs do when they get accused of stealing millions of dollars." "I am not a CEO," Claire said. The truth of it stung a little less than she expected. "Not anymore. I am your sister. Tell me which wing." Another pause. Claire could picture Mia biting her lower lip, glancing toward some set of double doors. "Cardiac care," Mia said. "4th floor. Harborview Medical Center, East entrance. You cannot miss the sign." "I will be there as fast as I can," Claire said. There was a rustle on the other end, the squeak of what might have been a chair. When Mia spoke again, her voice had lost some of its sharpness. "You do not have to prove anything, Claire," she said. "You always say you will come, and something more important shows up. I stopped taking it personally. That should have been impossible to stop taking." "Personally," Claire said, "I am not asking you to believe me. I am telling you where I will be." Mia did not answer right away. The plaza around Claire moved in its own tempo. Cars eased into the curb for drop-offs. An employee stepped outside to smoke, cupping his lighter against the damp air. Behind her on the concrete, her backpack rested against her leg. "Okay," Mia said at last. The word came smaller, like it had been folded in on itself. "If you really want to come, I am here." "I am on my way," Claire said. She ended the call before she could add anything that sounded like a promise she might break. The phone returned to the home screen. The red circles still waited, crowding the top row of icons. Emails, voicemails, messages, all flashing little silent demands. Claire stared at them for a moment. Then she pressed and held the power button. Slide to power off. She slid. The screen went dark, taking the noise with it. For a few seconds, she sat on the damp step phone in one hand, backpack strap in the other, looking at the reflection of the tower in the puddle at her feet. The building loomed tall in the water's surface, warped by ripples from the drizzle, a distorted version of what it was. She lifted her shoe and broke the reflection in half. When she stood, her legs felt stiff. She slung the backpack over one shoulder and started toward the sidewalk. She had almost reached the edge of the plaza when she heard her name. Miss Donovan. She turned. Louis stood just outside the revolving doors, one hand on the metal frame to keep it from turning. The lobby lights behind him outlined his shoulders. "It is Claire," she said when he reached her. "You can use my first name." He considered that, then nodded once. "Claire," he said, "I realized I had something that might be useful." He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small white card. The front bore the logo of the security company in blue, his name printed beneath it. He flipped it over and uncapped a pen from behind his ear, writing a number in clear blocky digits on the back. "The office line on there is useless for what you are dealing with," he said. "This is my cell, in case you ever need to talk to someone who is not a lawyer or a journalist." He held the card out. She took it. The paper was slightly rough under her fingers. "You do not even know me," she said. He shrugged. "I know what it looks like when a life comes apart," he said. "I know what it feels like when people only call because they want something. If you need a human being who has no stake in your company or your case, that is my number." For a second, she could not find where to put her eyes. The ground, the card, his face. "My grandmother is in the hospital," she said. The sentence felt like it came from somewhere deeper than her chest. "She had a heart attack last night. My sister has been there alone." Luis's expression shifted, softening at the edges. "Then you should go," he said. "The emails will still be there when you get back. Hospitals have chairs that are going to be much worse than these steps, but at least you will be sitting in the right place." There was no judgment in his tone, just a straightforward suggestion. Claire slipped the card into the inside pocket of her coat, next to where her badge used to rest. The absence of the plastic was noticeable. The rectangle of card filled the space differently. "Thank you, Louise," she said. He gave a slight nod and stepped back toward the doors. "Good luck," he said. The glass revolved around him, taking him back into the lobby and its blinking lights. Claire turned away from the tower and walked toward the nearest light rail station. The city shifted as she moved downtown, thinning into lower buildings, then into a view of the water as the street sloped. On the platform, damp air wrapped around her ankles. A digital sign glowed with arrival times. She checked the map on the wall to confirm the stop closest to Harborview, tracing the colored line with her eyes. When the train arrived, she stepped aboard and found a plastic seat by the window. The city slid past build by build. Office blocks gave way to small shops, then to wider streets lined with older brick buildings. People got on and off, shaking rain from their coats, adjusting bags, staring at their own phones. Claire kept her hands in her lap. With nothing to scroll through, her mind filled the space instead. She pictured Mia at 8, standing on a folding chair in Eleanor's kitchen to reach the counter flower on her nose hair in 2 uneven braids. She pictured her at 16, holding up a college acceptance letter, eyes wide, phone pressed to her chest, because Claire had just said she could not make the tour but would visit later. She thought of Eleanor at their mother's funeral, small and straight-backed in a dark dress, one arm around each of them. How her hand had trembled only once, when no one was looking. The train slowed near a cluster of tall gray buildings and pulled into the station. Harborview rose up beyond the tracks, all glass and concrete and rectangular windows. The letters of its name ran along the facade in large, clear font. Claire stepped onto the platform and followed the signs toward the east entrance. Automatic doors slid open on approach, releasing warm air that smelled of disinfectant and coffee. Inside, the lobby buzzed with voices and footsteps, wheels on linoleum, the occasional sharp beep from a monitor somewhere beyond the waiting area. She crossed the threshold, the doors closing behind her, with a soft hiss. The sound hit her first. Not loud, not sharp. A layered hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Voices low and high. The squeak of a gurney wheel that needed oil. The steady beep of a monitor. A TV in the corner playing daytime news with the volume turned down so low the anchors' mouths moved in silence. Harborview's lobby was a wide space of pale tile and glass. Plastic chairs lined the walls in tidy rows. A kiosk glowed in the center where a volunteer with gray hair and a bright blue vest pointed people toward elevators and clinics. Claire paused just inside the doors, her eyes adjusting from the gray of the street to the harsh brightness inside. "Can I help you find something?" the volunteer asked. "Cardiac care," Claire said. "My grandmother is here, Eleanor Park." The volunteer tapped the name into a tablet, then nodded toward a bank of elevators. "Fourth floor," she said. "Cardiac wing. Take those up, then follow the red line on the floor. The waiting room is just past the nurse's station." "Thank you," Claire said. She crossed the lobby, the soles of her sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The air smelled clean, in a way that felt forced layers of chemicals laid over something more human. Inside the elevator, she stared at the panel. The button with the number 4 glowed red when she pressed it. A woman in scrubs stepped in at the last second, her badge clipped near her shoulder, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She smiled at Claire briefly, then looked at her phone. The doors closed. The elevator rose. Claire felt each floor count in the small shift of gravity. 2, 3, 4. The door slid open to a hallway with softer lights and quieter voices. A strip of red tape ran down the center of the linoleum, curving around a corner. She followed it. The cardiac waiting room tucked into a corner of the floor, half walled off from the corridor. A coffee machine hummed on a side table. Stacks of old magazines sagged in wire racks. A large window looked out over the hill, the view full of rooftops and a strip of highway. Plastic chairs filled most of the space, arranged in small clusters. Several were occupied. A woman with a crossword puzzle pencil tapping her teeth. An older man sleeping with his head tipped back, mouth slightly open. A teenager in a hoodie with earphones and eyes closed but jaw tight. Mia sat near the window. She was folded into one of the chairs, feet tucked up, arms wrapped around a paper cup. Jeans, sneakers, an oversized dark green sweatshirt with her college logo half hidden in the wrinkles. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot that listed to one side. Dark circles sat under her eyes. For a second, Claire watched her from the doorway. There were traces of the kid who had followed her around the house in sumas with a notebook and 100 questions. Traces of their mother in the shape of her mouth. Traces of Eleanor in the slope of her cheekbones. Then Mia looked up and saw her. Surprise hit first, quick and unfiltered. It flickered across her face, widening her eyes, parting her lips. Something like disbelief followed, then something tighter. "You came," Mia said. "I did," Claire said. The words felt unnecessary and completely needed at the same time. Mia lowered her feet to the floor, uncurling herself from the chair, and stood. Up close, she smelled faintly of stale coffee and the institutional soap from hospital bathrooms. "You did not text," Mia said. "I thought you changed your mind, or got dragged into some emergency meeting, or whatever it is you do when you disappear." "I turned my phone off," Claire said, "on purpose." Mia blinked. "You turned it off," she repeated, like she had never heard those words in that order from Claire's mouth before. Claire nodded. "So, no lawyers," she said, "no board, no reporters?" "Just me," Mia said, voice softening around the edges, without quite losing its caution. "And Grandma." "How is she?" Claire asked. Mia glanced toward the hallway. "She is sleeping right now," she said. "They gave her something. She had a procedure this morning. They put a little tube in one of her arteries. The doctor says it helps with the blood flow." "A stent," Claire said. "Yeah." Mia looked surprised that she knew the word. "They said we can go in again in a bit. She keeps asking why you are not here, by the way." That last part came out with a half shrug, tossed casual, but the look she gave Claire with it was not casual at all. "I am here now," Claire said quietly. Mia's jaw moved like she was working her teeth against the inside of her cheek. She nodded once quick. "Do you want coffee?" she asked. She asked. "It tastes like someone burned the beans and then poured regret over them, but it is hot." "Sure," Claire said. They walked together to the side table. Mia refilled her cup from the machine, then filled another and handed it to Claire. The coffee smelled thin and a little sour. Claire wrapped her hands around the cup anyway. "Have you been here all night?" Claire asked. "Since last evening," Mia said. "They let me sit with her until visiting hours ended, then I slept on that chair over there for a while." She pointed at one tucked in a corner, a blanket still draped over its back. "A nurse woke me up at 5 and told me to stretch my legs, or I would turn into a pretzel." "You should have called me again," Claire said. "I did," Mia said. "Twice, straight to voicemail." "Right." The dead screen, the silence she had chosen. The guilt that rose was familiar, but it sat differently now, heavier and somehow more honest. "I am sorry," Claire said. Mia laughed, once a short sound without much humor. "You say that a lot," she said. "You know that." "Yes," Claire said. "I do." They went back to the chairs by the window. Mia sat setting her cup on the floor between her shoes. Claire took the seat next to hers. Outside the glass, the city spilled down toward the water in a jumble of buildings. Cars moved along the highway in small, slow lines. "What did the doctor say?" Claire asked. "That it could have been worse," Mia said. "That she got here fast, so there is not as much damage as there could have been." They gave me a stack of pamphlets with pictures of hearts cross-sectioned like grapefruits. I read too and wanted to throw up. Claire glanced at her. "You look exhausted," she said. "So, do you?" Mia replied. "At least you do not have to take an exam tomorrow." "You have an exam tomorrow?" Claire asked. "I did," Mia said. "I emailed the professor. He said to take care of my family, then send him a note later. He is one of the good ones." Claire listened to the way Mia said family. There was no hesitation, no qualifier. It still included her despite everything. "You could have told me," Claire said, "about the test, about all of this." Mia's eyes slid to her. "I did tell you," she said. "Maybe not about the specific test, but about Grandma getting tired walking up the stairs, about her chest feeling tight sometimes." She took a sip of coffee, grimaced. "You said you would call and ask her to see a doctor. I guess you were busy." Claire thought back to the messages she had scrolled through without letting them land. 2 months ago. A note from Mia with a half-joking line about Eleanor panting after the mail. Claire had read it in the back of a car on the way to the airport and had typed a response about setting up a telehealth appointment, then never hit send. "I was," Claire said. "I let the rest of my life crowd this out. That is not a good excuse. It is just what happened." Mia watched her for a long moment. "You built a giant company," Mia said. "Congratulations. Everybody says that about you. Your sister is such a big deal. They say it like I am supposed to be proud, like your overachieving counts for both of us." There was no spite in her tone, only a tired kind of statement. "I always told them I was," Mia went on. "Proud, I mean. And I was, kind of. But it is hard to stay proud when the person you are proud of is never actually there." The words hit cleanly. No drama, no raised voice. They did not need either. "I deserve that," Claire said. "It is not about what you deserve," Mia said. "It is about what it felt like. For me, for Grandma." Her fingers tightened around the paper cup until it crinkled. "It felt like we were always second to something. Investors, product launches, keynotes, whatever." Claire swallowed, forcing her voice to stay even. "I have told myself for years that I am doing this for us," she said. "For you, for Grandma. So, you never have to worry about rent or medical bills or tuition." "And that is great," Mia said. "Really? But sometimes I would rather worry about rent and have you show up to my birthday than not worry and blow out candles with Grandma in a kitchen where your name is just a story." Her eyes were wet now, though she blinked quickly as if trying to clear them before they could fall. Claire wanted to reach out and touch her hand. She did not yet. "You are allowed to be angry," Claire said. "I am angry at me. You should be too." Mia let out a breath that shook slightly at the end. "I was," she said. "For a long time. I still am a little. But mostly I am just tired." She tipped her head back against the wall and closed her eyes briefly. A nurse in light blue scrubs appeared at the edge of the waiting room. "Family of Eleanor Park," she called. Both Claire and Mia straightened. "That is us," Mia said, standing quickly. The nurse gave them a polite smile. "She is awake," the nurse said. "You can see her for a bit. 2 visitors at a time is fine as long as you do not stay too long. She tires easily." Mia glanced at Claire. "Come on," she said. The hallway to Eleanor's room felt narrower than the lobby. Machines hummed behind thin curtains. Monitors beeped in regular patterns. The nurse led them to a door with a small window. Inside, Eleanor lay propped against white pillows, a thin blanket pulled up to her waist. Her hair, once dense and silver, spread in a thinner halo around her head. A clear tube rested under her nose, taped to one cheek. Wires snaked from under her gown to a bank of monitors that glowed green and blue. Her eyes, though, were the same as always, dark and sharp. "There you are," she said, voice rough but awake. "Both of you. I must look worse than I feel if I get the full audience." Mia moved to one side of the bed and took her grandmother's hand, careful to avoid the IV line. "Do not joke," she said. "You scared me." "I scared myself," Eleanor said, chest grabbing like someone sat on me. "I have had more pleasant mornings." Her gaze shifted to Claire. "And you," she said. "I saw your face on television before I saw it in my doorway. That is not the order I prefer." Claire stepped closer, fingers tightening around the rail of the bed. "I am sorry," she said. The words felt inadequate in every direction. For that, for not being here sooner, for not being at your birthday, or at Thanksgiving, or any of the days between. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. The monitor beside the bed continued its steady pattern, a green line lifting and falling. "You look thin," Eleanor said at last. "Sit down before you fall down." Claire let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. She pulled the plastic chair closer to the bed and sat near the foot where she could see both her grandmother and her sister's face. Up close, she could see the new lines etched at the corners of Eleanor's mouth. The skin on the back of her hand was almost translucent veins, like fine blue threads beneath it. "They say it was small," Eleanor said. "A warning kind of heart attack, like a tap on the shoulder." "That is what the doctor told me," Mia said. "Doctors like to dress bad things up with metaphors," Eleanor said. "Makes them easier to swallow. It is still the same thing in there." She tapped her chest lightly with the hand that did not have the IV. "Old engine, noisy pipes." "Do not say it like that," Mia said. "You are fine." "For now," Eleanor said, "which is all anyone gets." She turned her attention back to Claire. "What happened to you?" she asked. "One minute you are on top of the world. Next minute you are on the news with people saying your name like it tastes sour." "They think I stole from my own company," Claire said. "At least they did. It is complicated." "Everything worth anything is complicated," Eleanor said. "Did you do what they said?" "No," Claire said. The answer came quicker than any other all day. "I did a lot of other things wrong. Not that." Eleanor's eyes held hers a beat longer, then nodded once. "Good," she said. "Jail visits on top of hospital visits would be too much for this family." Mia snorted, then covered it with a cough when Eleanor shot her a look. Silence settled for a moment, softer this time. Claire looked at her. Grandmother really looked the way she had not made time to do in years. She saw the remnants of the woman who had carried them through funerals and court hearings and first days of school with lunchboxes packed in twos. The woman who had sat on the edge of Claire's bed when she was 16 and broken and had said over and over, "You just keep getting up." "I have not been a very good granddaughter," Claire said. Eleanor's mouth curved a small, tired smile. "You have been a busy one," she said, "which is not the same thing. Busy is easy. You can hide in it. There is nothing in that world you built that could not be paused for a day to see an old woman eat cake." The reprimand, such as it was, came without sting. It arrived as simple observation. Claire felt heat at the back of her throat. "I want to do better," she said, "if you will let me." Eleanor watched her, and for a second Claire felt 16 again, hoping for some sign she had not disappointed every person in the room. "It took me 78 years to get to this bed," Eleanor said. "I have made a mess of more days than I can count. I still got to sit in a kitchen with 2 granddaughters and watch them grow." She reached out with her free hand, the IV line tugging slightly. "If you are here now, that counts for something." Claire slid her hand into her grandmother's, feeling the papery thinness of her skin, the surprising firmness of her grip. Outside, light shifted behind the window clouds, opening just enough for a strip of pale sun to touch the glass. The monitors kept their measured pulse as 3 generations of the same family sat in a small hospital room, sharing the same air for the first time in longer than any of them wanted to admit. Hours thinned out around the edges inside the hospital. They spilled into one another, measured less by clocks than by small routines. Nurses checking lines, technicians wheeling in portable machines, paper cups of coffee cooling before anyone finished them. Claire lost track of how long she and Mia sat in that narrow room with Eleanor. Long enough for the light outside the window to shift from flat gray to something softer. Long enough for Eleanor's voice to grow raspier and her eyelids heavier. "Go breathe somewhere that does not smell like antiseptic," Eleanor told them finally, waving a tired hand. "I will still be here when you get back." Mia kissed her on the cheek. Claire squeezed her hand once more before they stepped out into the hallway. The cardiac wing felt quieter than the lobby, but the hum never stopped. Machines pulsed and beeped, wheels turned, soft shoes whispered over linoleum. "Do you want to grab food?" Mia asked. "There is a cafeteria downstairs. Everything tastes like cardboard, but the fries are decent." "In a minute," Claire said. "I need to call my lawyer back. Apparently turning my phone off makes people nervous." Mia snorted. "Who knew?" she said. "I will be in the cafeteria. 2nd floor. Follow the smell of overcooked broccoli." She lifted her cup in a half salute and headed toward the elevators. Claire watched her go for a second, then stepped into a small alcove near a window where a fake plant tried to look alive. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. The screen stayed black until she pressed the side button. It blinked awake, then flooded. The red badges had multiplied. Her voicemail icon looked bloated. Emails had stacked in endless rows. One notification sat at the top, time-stamped an hour ago. "Miss Id, call Attorney Lee." She tapped the number, held the phone to her ear. It rang twice. Claire, Attorney Lee answered. No greeting, just her name. He sounded like he had already had too much coffee and not enough sleep. You finally surfaced. I was in a hospital, she said. My grandmother. Heart attack. A brief pause. I am sorry, he said. The sympathy in his voice surprised her. Is she all right? She will be, Claire said. They caught it early. Good, he said. There was a rustle of paper on his end. I will be quick. We have movement on the case. Claire shifted her weight, shoulder pressed to the wall. A cart clinked past at the end of the hall, pushed by a nurse humming under her breath. What kind of movement, Claire asked. The kind that might keep you from being the villain in your own press cycle, he said. We got the forensic accounting report. It is bad for Grant, which is good for you. He did not wait for her response words, tumbling in practiced rhythm. The auditors traced the diverted funds, he continued. Multiple transfers from Northbridge to those shell entities, including Cedar Cove Strategies. On paper, you are listed as the officer, but the signature does not match. Not according to the handwriting guy. More importantly, the originating IP addresses for the approvals are tied to a VPN that your account never used. Claire frowned. I thought you said there was no external breach, she said. There is no sign hackers got into the main system, he said. This was done by someone who knew exactly how you work. Same time windows when you usually approve documents. Same locations. Only the machine logged is not yours. Guess whose is? Grant's, she said. Gold star, he replied. His laptop, his office, his login session active during approvals that were tagged with your credentials. Looks like he piggybacked it, used your saved profile, then created that Delaware holding company in your name. Claire let her head rest against the cool wall. Down the hall, a monitor beeped in a slow, steady rhythm. So they know it was him, she said. They know it was someone with access in his position, Lee said. We are connecting the rest. There are wires from the shell companies to a personal account that belongs to a trust in his wife's maiden name. We are still peeling layers. Can he go to jail for this, she asked. Eventually, Lee said. He is already lawyered up. That tells me he is worried. Right now, I am less interested in what happens to him and more in what we can do for you. Claire stared at her reflection in the small window. The glass threw back a faint, warped version of her face. What does that mean, she asked. It means we can go to the board with this, he said. Clear your name internally before it leaks. Once they see the audit and the trail, they will have no choice but to retract their accusations. We can talk about public statements then about reputational repair. Reputational repair, she repeated. The phrase felt like something pulled from a crisis manual. It also means, Lee went on, that the board is likely to ask you to come back. They need stability. The company took a hit when the story broke. Stock dipped morale too. Northbridge is your baby. They know it. Investors know it. A woman in a pale green cardigan walked past, clutching the hand of a boy with a bandage around his wrist. Their steps were slow synchronized. I am standing in a hospital hallway, Claire said. My grandmother is in a room on this floor because her heart could not keep up. My sister has been here all night alone. You are telling me to think about my stock price. I am telling you to think about options, he said. I am not blind to your situation. I have a mother who collects heart medication like bottle caps. I know how these weeks feel, but you hired me to protect you. This is part of that. He stopped, then added more gently, I am saying you are not as trapped as you felt 3 days ago. The statement hung between them like a bridge she was not sure she wanted to cross. What if I do not want to go back, she said slowly. Lee went quiet long enough that she wondered if the call had dropped. You built that company from nothing, he said. You told me you would rather lose the apartment and the car than lose Northbridge. Has that changed in 3 days? Claire thought of the tower, of her badge lighting the reader red, of Luis on the concrete steps telling her about his son's drawing, of Mia curled into a plastic chair upstairs smelling like coffee and worry. It might have started changing a long time ago, she said. I just did not look at it. You do not have to decide now, Lee said. We will set a meeting with the board once I send them the report. They will want you there. You can listen. Ask questions. Choose then. She watched a nurse adjust an IV in a room across the hall, tapping the bag, gently checking the line. Send me the report, she said. I will read it. I will talk to them when the time comes. Right now I need to get back to my family. Understood, he said. Text me if you need anything. And Claire? Yes. You did not deserve the way they treated you, he said. Do not forget that while you are deciding what to do with them. When the call ended, the sounds of the cardiac wing rushed back in louder for a moment. Claire slipped the phone into her pocket without turning it off. She would let it ring if it wanted. She knew how to ignore it now. She went down 2 flights of stairs to the cafeteria. The air grew thicker as she descended, the smell of reheated vegetables and fryer oil pressing in. Mia sat at a table near the window, a plastic tray in front of her, a pile of fries, a small cup of what might have been soup, half a sandwich. She was picking at a fry, tearing it into smaller pieces before eating any. "How is he?" Mia asked as Claire slid into the chair opposite. "Who?" Claire said. "Your lawyer," Mia said. "I assume that was who called. You get a different voice when you talk to people who bill by the hour." Claire huffed a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. "He is the same," she said. "Fast, efficient, a little too in love with phrases like reputational repair." "Sounds fun," Mia said. She popped a torn bit of fry into her mouth. "So, are you going back?" Claire lifted her gaze. Back where she asked, though they both knew the answer. "To Northbridge," Mia said. "Back to being the person whose calendar looks like Tetris. Back to never answering my texts." She said it lightly, but her eyes stayed on Claire's face, watchful. "They might want me to," Claire said. "He thinks the board will ask. They found evidence that someone else did the stealing," Grant, Mia said. She said his name like it tasted wrong. "I never liked him." "You met him twice," Claire said. "Twice was enough," Mia replied. "He always looked at you like you were a product he was selling, not a person." Claire let her fingers trace the rim of her paper cup. "When we started Northbridge, we were in a half-finished apartment with folding chairs and bad Wi-Fi," she said. "I thought if we could just get to Series A, everything would feel secure. Then I thought if we could get to 100 employees, then 200. It never stopped." "Did you feel secure?" Mia asked. "At the top," Claire said. "For about 5 minutes at a time, usually on airplanes when the Wi-Fi was broken." Mia cracked a smile. "I like airplane, Claire," she said. She texts back. They sat with that for a moment. The cafeteria buzzed around them. A toddler banged a spoon against a tray. A doctor with a stethoscope around his neck scrolled his phone with one hand while eating a muffin with the other. "Do you want to go back?" Mia asked finally. "Forget what the lawyer wants. Forget what the board wants. Do you, Claire Donovan, want to sit in that glass tower again and make slide decks until your eyes fall out?" Claire pictured the boardroom, the polished table, the rows of faces that had turned away from her 3 days ago. She pictured the way her chest had squeezed when Luis talked about his son's drawing, the way Mia's shoulders had sagged in relief when she walked into the waiting room. "I do not know," Claire said. "Part of me misses having answers, having control, being the person everyone calls when something is on fire." "Fire follows you either way," Mia said. "Grandma's heart did not exactly check your schedule before it started acting up." Claire looked at her sister, at the way she sat forward slightly, elbows on the table, expression open but cautious. "If I went back," Claire said slowly, "I am afraid I would become that person again. The one who thinks she is doing it all for her family, while she misses every important moment." Mia studied her, then looked out the window, where a row of trees lined the edge of the parking lot, branches bare against the sky. "You remember when you taught me how to ride a bike?" Mia asked. Claire blinked at the sudden turn. "Yeah," she said. "You were 5. You refused to let Grandma help. You said it had to be me. You held the back of the seat and ran behind me for like an hour," Mia said. "I kept thinking you were still there even after you let go." "You did not fall," Claire said. "Then I did," Mia said. "You did not see it. You got a call. You turned away for 2 minutes and I toppled into the ditch, scraped both knees. Grandma had to carry me inside." A flush of memory rose, a ringing phone, an apology tossed over her shoulder, a small body sobbing in the yard. "I forgot that part," Claire said quietly. "I did not," Mia said. "But I also remember you running beside me before that. I remember the part where you were there. I think that is what I wanted more of. Not perfection, just more of your hand on the seat and less of the ditch." Her voice trembled on the last word, but she kept going. "If going back means we only get ditch, Claire," she said, "then maybe do not go back. If there is a way you can do it, where you are still here, really here, then that is different. Only you know if that is possible." Claire let her head drop, hair falling forward as she stared at the cheap pattern on the cafeteria table. "I do not know how to be half of something," she said. "I only know full speed." "Then maybe pick a different road," Mia said. She nudged the tray toward Claire. "Eat a fry," she added. "They are disgusting. Misery loves company." Claire reached for one. It was lukewarm and limp, oversalted. She ate it anyway. For a few minutes, they sat and traded small complaints about the food, the chairs, the smell, the endless brightness of hospital lights. The conversation slipped into easier channels. Mia told a story about a professor who wore the same corduroy blazer every day. Claire shared a memory of Eleanor sneaking candy into a movie theater in the pocket of her heavy coat. By the time they went back upstairs, the weight in Claire's chest had shifted. It had not lifted, but it had changed shape. Back in Eleanor's room, the beeping and humming welcomed them like part of a familiar soundtrack. Eleanor was awake, a book open in her lap that she was not really reading. "Did you find food?" she asked. "Something that pretends to be food," Mia said. "Hospital cuisine keeps you motivated to get discharged," Eleanor said. "Smart strategy." Claire moved closer to the bed. She reached out, and this time when she wrapped her fingers around the cool metal of the rail, the contact felt less like clinging and more like anchoring. Eleanor stayed in the hospital 4 more days. They were quieter than the first one, but not by much. There were still tests and consults, blood pressure cuffs hissing around her arm, nurses taking notes on tablets. The alarm stayed mostly silent, which everyone treated as a small miracle. Claire fell into a rhythm without meaning to. Morning at Harborview, coffee that tasted like hot paper, an hour in the room while Eleanor dozed, another in the waiting area trading stories with Mia, watching light move across the floor. In the afternoon, she let herself be pulled back toward the other life that refused to release its grip. On the third day, she sat in a corner of the cafeteria with her laptop open, the hospital Wi-Fi struggling to keep up. Attorney Lee's email sat at the top of her inbox, bold subject line full of words like findings and urgent. She clicked it. The forensic report was attached as a PDF. Dozens of pages, charts, tables, arrows connecting accounts. Each line of numbers pulsed with meaning she did not want and could not ignore. Grant's name threaded through it like a darker line in a piece of cloth. His logins, his approval sessions, his machine ID. The Delaware Corporation papers with her forged signature and his handwriting on the registration fee check. It was all there. Lee had written a summary in the body of the email. The language was precise. "We can establish a pattern. We can demonstrate that the approvals were falsified. We can show intent. The board will see that you were framed." At the bottom, he had added one last line. "They have asked for a meeting, tomorrow, in person." Claire stared at the screen until the edges of the text softened. Then she closed the laptop and went back upstairs to sit with her grandmother while a daytime game show played in the background. The next afternoon, she found herself in a very different room. The conference space was rented by Lee's firm on the 31st floor of a building with a more modest lobby than Northbridge's. The carpet smelled faintly of industrial cleaner. A long table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs that had seen too many depositions. A large monitor faced them at one end of the table. Several faces filled the screen in their own small rectangles, each in a tidy office. 2 board members had come in person, sitting opposite Claire and Lee. Claire's suit felt unfamiliar on her shoulders. She had pulled it from the back of her suitcase, ironed it in Eva's kitchen with a sputtering iron she found in a cupboard. It fit, but differently than it had a month ago. Lee tapped a button on the remote. The first slide of his presentation appeared on the screen. He spoke with measured calm, walking them through the report. IP addresses, timestamps, the VPN that had never passed through her devices, the shell companies that linked back to accounts controlled by entities tied to Grant's family. One by one, the rectangles on the screen grew more still. The 2 board members in the room listened with their hands folded, eyes on the printed copies in front of them. "We did not conduct a thorough enough review before acting," one of them said when Lee finished. Her voice had the flatness of someone speaking from a script she hated, but knew she had to read. "We see now that we moved too fast. That is on us." The chair of the board, framed in his box on the monitor, cleared his throat. "Claire," he said, "you have every right to be angry." She was in certain directions. Less than she might have been a week ago. More in ways she could not easily name. "Right now I am mostly tired," she said. "We will see what I am later." A couple of them managed small, strained smiles. "What matters," Lee said smoothly, "is that my client's name is cleared. I believe you have something prepared." The chair nodded. He adjusted his glasses and glanced down at a page just out of view of his webcam. "We would like to formally retract any implication that you engaged in fraud," he said. "We will issue a statement to that effect to our employees and with your consent to the press. We want to make clear that you were the victim of internal misconduct, not the cause of it." He said victim as if it tasted strange. "And Grant?" Claire asked. "There will be consequences," the chair said. "Termination, civil action. We are exploring options for criminal referral as we speak." Shame flickered across a couple of faces on the screen. It moved fast like a ripple on water. "There is something else," another board member added. He leaned forward, his image warping slightly as the camera tried to refocus. "Northbridge is in a precarious position. We have had 2 senior executives step aside in a week. Investors are unsettled. Staff are anxious." He paused, then continued. "We want you to come back, Claire," he said. "We want you to resume your role as chief executive. No qualifiers, no interim. This company is yours. It has your name on it, whether the sign out front says so or not." The words should have felt like a lifeline. For years she had built everything around that office, that title, that building. Losing them had felt like falling off a cliff. Having them offered back should have felt like someone lowering a ladder. Instead, it felt like standing in front of a doorway she had already stepped out of, being asked to walk backward. She saw the tower in her mind's eye, the glass, the badge reader blinking red, Luis on the steps with his thermos, Mia's hunched shoulders in a hospital waiting room, Eleanor's hand in hers, thin but stubbornly warm. Lee was watching her. So were 6 people on a screen and 2 across the table. She could imagine the version of herself from a month ago in this chair. That Claire would have taken a breath, set her jaw, talked about conditions and control, insisted on public apologies and reshaped reporting structures. She would have gone back into the building with her head up and her hands already reaching for the wheel. This Claire sat very still. "I am grateful you were clearing my name," she said. "That mattered more than I wanted to admit." "We should have handled it differently," the chair said. "Yes," she said, "you should have." He swallowed behind his tie. "As for coming back," she said, feeling each word as she shaped it, "I am not going to." The air in the room shifted, not physically, just in the way people held themselves, a small tightening and intake of breath. "You are declining," one of the in-person board members said. "May I ask why?" "Because I am not sure I can walk into that tower and not become the person I was inside it," Claire said. And that person did not notice her grandmother's heart was failing, did not answer her sister's calls, did not remember how to be present anywhere that did not have a quarterly target attached to it. She kept her eyes on the table for a beat, then lifted them to the screen. "I am not saying Northbridge is inherently corrupt," she said. "I am saying that the way I lived inside it brought out parts of me I cannot afford to indulge anymore." "So, that is it?" the chair asked. "You are walking away from everything you built." "I am walking toward other things I neglected," she said. "I still care about the company. I do not wish it ill. If you want advice from a distance, we can talk about a consulting arrangement, but I will not sit in that chair again, not as the person I have to be to keep it." Silence held for a moment. Lee sat back in his chair, his expression neutral, and beneath that faintly impressed. One of the rectangles on the screen, a woman with a streak of white in her hair, nodded almost imperceptibly. "You have that right," she said. "We will respect it. We will need to discuss successors," the chair added, quickly turning his attention to Lee to the mechanics of what came next. "The statement, the legal filings. There is a lot to coordinate." Claire let their words blur into a hum. She answered when Lee prompted her, agreed to review statements before release, insisted on clear language that absolved her without hedging. When the meeting finally ended and the monitor went dark, the quiet in the room felt thick. "You just turned down the thing every founder says they would kill for," Lee said lightly as he gathered his papers. "A full exoneration and an invitation back to the top." "I took the exoneration," she said. "That seemed reasonable." "And the invitation?" he asked. She thought of Mia holding a paper cup between her palms, as if it were the only warm thing in the room. Of Eleanor, rolling her eyes at hospital food. Of Luis talking about a 7-year-old's drawing. "I decided not to kill for it," she said. Lee let out a short breath through his nose that might have been a laugh. "You are going to confuse a lot of people," he said. "They will live," she said. He slid a folder across the table toward her. "That is a draft list of the assets that were frozen," he said. "Once the bank gets official word from the board about the investigation findings, they will start to release them. It will not be all at once. It will not be everything you lost on paper, but you will not be living on your friend's couch forever." Claire glanced at the list without really reading it. "I appreciate that," she said. Outside the conference room, Seattle spread itself under a thin layer of cloud. Office towers, cranes rounded hills. Somewhere in that gray Harborview's windows caught the light. She stepped out of the office building into air that smelled faintly of rain and exhaust, and roasted coffee from a cart on the corner. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. For a second she considered not answering. Then she pulled it out. A text from Mia. "Grandma is complaining about the Jell-O again. She told the nurse she has lived too long to eat something so nervous." Claire smiled, small but real. Her fingers moved before she thought too hard about it. On my way back, she typed, "Bring contraband real food." She slid the phone away and headed toward the light rail station. 2 weeks later, she stood in a different kind of glass building. Not a tower this time. A converted warehouse in Fremont with high ceilings, exposed beams, and long communal tables. A neon sign at the back read Maker House in warm orange letters. Whiteboards covered the walls, cluttered with sketches and sticky notes. A group of 4 founders sat around a battered conference table laptops, open eyes fixed on Claire. They looked young, even the oldest, but the shadows under their eyes matched her own in certain ways. "If you take that seed round at that valuation," she said, tapping a number on the whiteboard, "you are going to spend the next 3 years running after a story you did not write. You do not need that much cash yet. Take less, give up less, grow slower and smarter." They listened. They argued a little. They adjusted their spreadsheet. She watched them, saw flashes of herself in the way they leaned over the table, voices overlapping hearts pinned invisibly to their pitch decks. When the session ended, they thanked her, offered to pay in equity and a check. She took the check, told them to send the equity paperwork if they still felt generous in a month. As the room emptied, she sat for a moment in the quiet. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Mia appeared at the top. "Grandma gets discharged Friday. Doctor says someone has to stay with her at home for at least a couple weeks." Claire typed back, "I know a person. She clears her own schedule now." She hit send, then slipped the phone into her pocket and stood. Through the big windows at the front of the space, the afternoon light fell across the floor in wide bands. Dust motes drifted in it, slow and aimless. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, Claire picked up her bag and walked toward the door, her steps unhurried. Eleanor's house in Tacoma was smaller than Claire remembered. Not physically. The square footage was the same. The low-ceilinged living room, the narrow hallway with its 3 doors, the kitchen that looked out on a patch of backyard where tomato vines clung to a chain-link fence. Smaller in the way that places sometimes seemed when you had spent years in glass towers and high ceilings. The furniture sat closer together. The air smelled like old books, lemon cleaner, and something Claire could not name that felt like time. On the day Eleanor came home, Claire stood on the front porch with a grocery bag in one hand and her suitcase by her knee. Mia had dropped them off and gone back to campus for a late lab. She had promised to return that weekend with fresh laundry and a batch of cookies from a friend who stress baked. The front door opened inward on hinges that creaked a little. "Do not stand there like a stranger," Eleanor said from her armchair in the living room. "My house is not a museum." She wore sweatpants and an oversized cardigan, the oxygen line under her nose, now a thin, familiar curve instead of a shocking intrusion. A small tank on wheels sat beside the chair, its gauge ticking quietly. Claire stepped inside, nudging the suitcase over the threshold, the grocery bag bumping against her calf. "I bought soup," she said, "and real bread. Not whatever they were pretending was bread at the hospital." "Then you can stay," Eleanor said. "Put the bread in the kitchen and your things in the back room. We will see which one you use more." Claire carried the groceries through the living room. The walls were lined with shelves of paperbacks and framed photographs. Some she knew by heart. 2 kids on a swing set. A younger version of Eleanor in a library surrounded by tall stacks of books. Claire at 12 holding a science fair ribbon. Mia at 6 grinning with a missing tooth. The back bedroom had been Claire's once. A narrow bed, a dresser with a sticky bottom drawer, a desk under the window, the wood worn smooth where her forearms had rested night after night while she did homework. The desk was clear now, save for a lamp and a glass jar of pens. She set her suitcase at the foot of the bed, then went to the kitchen. The space was tight, the counter crowded with a toaster, a coffee maker, a basket of onions, and a ceramic jar full of wooden spoons. Sun came in through the small window over the sink, catching dust motes in its beam and turning them into slow-moving specks of light. Claire put the bread on the counter and the soup in the cabinet, next to the old cans of beans and tomatoes. She found the kettle exactly where it had always been under the stove and filled it. When she came back to the living room, Eleanor was watching a game show, with the sound turned low. "The nurse said I am supposed to walk around the house a few times a day," Eleanor said. "Something about circulating seems inefficient. I was planning to die stationary." "Too bad," Claire said. "We are doing laps after tea," bossy Eleanor said, but her eyes warmed. They sat together for most of the afternoon, moving slowly through small tasks. Claire sorted pill bottles into the plastic organizer the hospital had sent home. Morning, noon, evening. Names she stumbled over, dosages she double-checked twice. Eleanor corrected her, once tapping the label with one thin finger. "That one is for blood pressure," she said. "If you give it to me at night, I will stand up too fast in the morning and fall on my face. Neither of us wants that." Claire nodded and moved the pill to the right compartment. Her laptop sat closed on the coffee table, pushed to one side. Every so often it blinked as if to remind her of its existence. She ignored it until late afternoon when Eleanor dozed and the light outside shifted toward gold. She opened it then, answering a handful of emails from the co-working space, confirming times for founder sessions, reviewing a short deck someone had sent. It felt contained in a way work rarely had before, a box she could open and close without it spilling into every corner of her life. Her phone vibrated once. A news alert sat on the screen. Northbridge Labs issues statement clearing, former CEO. She opened the article long enough to see her name in the headline. A photo she knew had been taken at a conference. Hair neat, blazer-sharp stage lights catching at the edge of her smile. The statement from the board used words that Lee had insisted on in their meeting. No evidence of wrongdoing, victim of internal embezzlement, confidence in her integrity. The comments below the piece had already begun to fill, some apologetic, some skeptical, some simply bored. Claire closed the browser. "Bad news," Eleanor asked from her chair. Her eyes were open again, narrow but alert. "They printed the board statement," Claire said. "Apparently I'm no longer interesting enough to hate." "Boredom is a step up from pitchforks," Eleanor said. "You will learn to appreciate it." That night, Claire cooked soup and grilled cheese in Eleanor's small kitchen. The bread crisped in the pan butter popping along the edges. The soup steamed in chipped bowls. They ate at the little table under the window, while the sky darkened outside. "You are better at this than your mother was," Eleanor said, dipping bread into her soup. "She burned everything except toast. And sometimes toast." "She taught me to read charts and bills," Claire said. "You taught me not to die from instant noodles." "I did my part," Eleanor said. Mia arrived 2 days later with a duffel bag and a plastic container of cookies. "You cannot live off soup and grilled cheese forever," she announced, setting the container on the counter. "These have oats. That makes them healthy." They fell into a 3-person rhythm. Mia took the bus down after classes and stayed through the weekend sleeping on the living room couch. She did homework at the kitchen table while Claire did consulting calls from the back room, the sound of her sister's pen scratching across paper a steady counterpoint. In the evenings, they watched whatever was on television that Eleanor could tolerate without making withering comments. Sometimes they turned it off and played cards instead. Claire watched her grandmother slice the deck with familiar precision, the oxygen tube bobbing slightly, as she laughed at Mia's terrible poker face. One Saturday afternoon, as sunlight slanted across the living room, Mia spread brochures on the coffee table. They were glossy and full of pictures: European cities, old plazas, rivers, students with backpacks and wide smiles. "Study abroad fair was last week," Mia said. They had a table for every continent except Antarctica. Claire picked up a brochure at random. A university in Copenhagen smiled back at her in saturated colors. "Any of these look good?" she asked. 3, Mia said. "Copenhagen, London, and this little program in New Zealand where you spend a semester counting fish." "Counting fish," Claire said. "Sounds rigorous." "It is ecology fieldwork," Mia said. "Very serious. Clipboards and everything." She tried to sound flippant. Claire saw the way her fingers hovered a fraction of an inch above the New Zealand pamphlet without touching it. "What is stopping you?" Claire asked. "Money," Mia said. "Scholarships cover some, but not all. Loans cover some, but not all. Grandma offered to sell the car, and I told her no." Eleanor snorted from her chair. "That car is older than you," she said. "They would pay us in pity." Mia smiled, then sobered. "I do not want you to feel like you have to fix this," she said to Claire. "You have enough going on with banks and unfreezing and whatever. I can wait a year, or 2, or never. Plenty of people never leave their zip code and turn out fine." Claire considered the brochures, the room, the pale lines on Eleanor's hands. "I have some money that is not tangled up in Northbridge," she said. "Savings from before. It is not penthouse money, but it is enough for plane tickets and a semester of counting fish." Mia shook her head. "I am not asking you for that. I am offering," Claire said. "I spent 9 years choosing work over you. If I get to choose you now, I am going to." Mia looked at her, really looked as if she were trying to see if there was a catch hidden in the corners of her mouth. "You sure?" she asked. "Yes," Claire said. Mia glanced at Eleanor. "Do you have an opinion?" she asked. "I think you should go see as much of the world as you can while your knees still work," Eleanor said. "And I think if your sister wants to spend her money on sending you there instead of buying another sleek gadget, you should let her." Mia laughed, and the tension in her shoulders eased. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I will apply. And if I end up living in a tent on a beach eating canned beans, I am blaming you both." "That is fair," Claire said. A week later, Claire met Luis and Noah at the Seattle Aquarium. The building on the waterfront felt different from the glass towers she had spent so long inside. It smelled of salt and damp, and faintly of fish food. Children's voices echoed off concrete layered in high, excited pitches. Noah waited just inside the entrance hands, stuffed in the pockets of his hoodie hair, slightly too long in front. When he saw her, his face brightened in a way that smoothed some of the teenage angles from it. "Hey," he said, "they have a new octopus." "I brought you stiff competition then," Claire said. "Octopuses are hard to beat." "Octopi," Noah corrected automatically, then winced. "Maybe both. I do not know. My teacher says scientists are still arguing about it." Luis stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder. "You made it," he said. "My grandmother kicked me out for the afternoon," Claire said. "Said if I did not go stare at something besides her, she was going to hide my coffee." "Wise woman," Luis said. They walked past the tide pool, where kids leaned over to touch sea stars under a volunteer's watchful eye. The light grew bluer as they moved deeper in. Tanks arched overhead. Schools of small fish moved as one body turning in tight silver clouds. In front of a massive window where a leopard shark glided by, Noah launched into a detailed explanation of marine ecosystems. Claire listened to ask questions when she could watch the way his hands moved as he spoke. "You would have made a good teacher," Luis murmured at one point, when Noah stepped closer to the glass to press his palm against it, matching pace with a ray. "I do not know," Claire said. "You are patient with him," Luis said. "That is more than half the job." In the cafe later, they sat with paper cups of coffee and a pile of napkins damp from condensation. Noah unwrapped a sandwich, still talking about a summer program he wanted to apply for at a research station on the coast. "Sounds like you have a plan," Claire said. "I am working on it," he said. "Dad says we can figure out the money." Luis raised his cup in a small toast. "We always do," he said. On the way out, they stepped into the bright, thin sunshine. The water beyond the walkway rippled under a light wind. Fairy horns sounded in the distance. "Thanks for inviting me," Claire said. "You are officially part of the aquarium club now," Noah said. "Membership comes with occasional text messages about sharks." "I will adjust my expectations accordingly," she said. On the ride back to Tacoma that evening, the train hummed steadily beneath her. She watched the city slide past the windows, her reflection layered over graffiti and warehouses and brief flashes of water. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A photo came through in a text from Mia. Eleanor at the kitchen table wearing her cardigan over a t-shirt that read, "Read more books." A plate of cookies in front of her, a small, mischievous smile on her face. The caption under the picture read, "She says the doctor did not forbid sugar specifically." Claire smiled, thumb hovering over the keyboard. "Tell her I am bringing broccoli tomorrow," she typed. The sugar was a mistake. A second later, 3 dots appeared, then Mia's reply. She says, "If you walk through that door with broccoli, she is changing the locks." Claire laughed softly, the sound blending with the train's steady rhythm. Outside the window, the last of the light slid down the sky, catching in the glass of distant houses, small rectangles of warmth in the blue. 6 months later, Seattle had traded its winter gray for a different shade of gray. The rain still came often, but the days stretched longer. The light stayed in the sky a little past dinner. Cherry trees along some streets had exploded into brief, stubborn blossoms that brightened whole blocks for a week at a time. On a Thursday evening, Claire stepped off the light rail downtown and walked up the hill toward Northbridge Tower. She had not been this close to it in weeks. There had been no reason. Her days were spent in other parts of the city now, in co-working spaces in Fremont, at a small library branch where she met founders who could not afford downtown rent, in Tacoma, where Eleanor timed her walks around the block like training laps. Still, as she turned the last corner, the tower filled her field of vision with the same blunt force it always had. 40 stories of glass and steel, the Northbridge sign bright over the revolving doors. She stopped on the far side of the street. Traffic flowed in front of her in waves. Headlights and brake lights painted short, moving lines on the wet asphalt. The air carried the smell of diesel and coffee and recent rain. The tower looked the same as the day they had locked her badge. Inside, she knew the lobby lights were on. The scanners blinked. People moved through their own evenings, carrying laptops and backpacks and tired shoulders. Her reflection flickered faintly in the lower windows. Dark sweater, jacket zipped halfway, hair pulled back. A shape that looked smaller than the one in the framed article still floating around online. She checked her phone. "Mia, we just got here. Grandma is already judging the bread. Hurry." Claire smiled at the screen. "On my way," she typed back. She slid the phone into her pocket and stayed on the sidewalk a moment longer. Her gaze shifted from the sign to the small dark shape at the edge of the plaza. The security desk was too far inside to see. The steps were visible, though a familiar slice of concrete. She remembered the feel of those steps under her in the rain, the heat of Luis's coffee cup in her hands, the way her breath had broken open without her permission. It felt like a long time ago and also close enough to touch. "Claire?" She turned. Luis walked toward her from the building entrance, jacket-zipped cap in one hand. He was out of uniform now, dark jeans, a shirt with the logo of a minor league team. His other hand was in his pocket. He moved with the loose gait of someone whose shift had just ended. "You beat me," she said. "I clocked out 5 minutes early," he replied. Perka being the guy with the keys to the supply closet. He fell into step beside her on the sidewalk. Up close, she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes had eased a little over the past months. Or maybe she was just noticing them differently. "How was your day?" he asked. "Less dramatic than the last time I saw this building," she said. "No lawyers, no board members, just a consulting call, and 3 reminders to Grandma that the doctor meant it when he said no stairs without supervision." "She listens to you more than she listens to Mia," he said. "She thinks Mia is still small enough to carry down the hall," Claire said. "She knows I would make her sign a liability waiver." Luis laughed quietly. They stood together for a moment looking at the tower. "Do you miss it?" he asked. It was not the first time someone had asked. The question landed differently here, spoken with the building itself in view. Claire considered. "I miss having a team in the same place," she said. "I miss whiteboards the size of a wall. I miss the feeling after a good product launch when everyone is exhausted and happy in the same direction." She let her eyes travel up the grid of windows, floors stacked like pages. "I do not miss the way my chest felt when I woke up at 3 in the morning and checked my email before breathing," she said. "I do not miss realizing I had not called my sister in a month and telling myself I would do it after the next meeting, or the next one." Luis nodded. "That sounds like a fair trade," he said. She shifted her gaze from the tower to him. "What about you?" she asked. "Ever wish you had stayed in finance?" "Sometimes I miss the challenge," he said. "The puzzle of it, making numbers behave. Then I remember the look on Noah's face when he handed me that drawing without me in it, and the nostalgia dries up." "How is he?" she asked. "Busy," Luis said. Pride sat under the word. "He got into that summer program at the research station. We are figuring out how to cover the rest after scholarships. He keeps sending me links about tide pools like I plan to take an exam too." "I will quiz you both," Claire said. He bumped his shoulder lightly against hers. "I will make flashcards," he said. A car horn sounded in the distance. The light at the corner changed. A line of pedestrians started across the street. "We should go," Claire said. "If we are late, Grandma will assume the worst and turn it into a story she tells for the next 10 years. "That would be efficient of her," Luis said. "Turn one late dinner into a decade of material." They crossed with the crowd. The restaurant sat half a block away from the tower, a small Italian place with red checkered tablecloths and candles melted into the necks of wine bottles. Through the front window, Claire could see people hunched over bowls of pasta light pooling on their faces. Inside, the air was warm and full of sounds. Plates clinking, forks scraping, a low hum of conversation. Someone laughed at the bar, the sound bouncing off the tiled floor. The host nodded when he saw Claire. He gestured toward a table near the back. "They are already here," he said. Eleanor sat at one side of the table, cardigan buttoned unevenly, oxygen tubing tucked behind her ears. A glass of water with lemon sat in front of her, half empty. Mia was beside her, hair loose over her shoulders. An open menu lay in front of both of them. "Finally," Eleanor said as Claire and Luis approached, "I was about to order without you and tell the waiter you were figments of my imagination." "We are very solid figments," Mia said. She stood to hug Claire, then reached to squeeze Luis's arm. "Hey, you made it. Would not miss this," he said. Claire leaned down to kiss Eleanor's cheek. The skin there was soft and cool. The familiar smell of Eleanor's soap and laundry detergent wrapped around her for a second. "How was the bus ride?" Claire asked. "Bumpy," Eleanor said, "but the driver had nice eyes. I decided not to die before dinner." "If you decide that, tell your cardiologist," Mia said. "Save him some trouble." They sat. Claire took the chair across from Mia. Luis sat at the corner, a diagonal line that connected him to all three. A server appeared with a basket of bread and small plates for oil. Eleanor eyed the basket with interest. "Doctor said no fried food," she said. "He did not say anything about carbs that sing to me." "We will tell him you misheard," Mia said. Menus opened, then closed. Orders were placed. Pasta with clams, eggplant baked in tomato sauce, salad that Eleanor promised to at least look at. While they waited, conversation slid easily from one topic to another. Mia talked about finals and the looming departure date for New Zealand. She had chosen the fish counting program after all. Her eyes lit up when she described the field station, the idea of waking up near an ocean that belonged to a different hemisphere. "I will send pictures," she said, "of everything. Fish, beach, weird hostel bathrooms." "I will send money," Claire said, "for sunscreen and laundry." Eleanor listened, her hand resting on her water glass. "You remember to come back," she said. "You can go around the world, but bring your stories home. They do not mean as much if no one is here to hear them." Mia squeezed her hand. "I will," she said. Louise added an update about Noah's latest science project, a scale model of a kelp forest that had taken over half their kitchen table. "He made me hold a flashlight at different angles to simulate seasonal light changes," Louise said. "I have never been more aware of how much photosynthesis is happening without my permission." Eleanor laughed, the sound raspier than it used to be, but still warm. "You are raising a menace," she said. "Feels accurate," he said. The food arrived, plates arranged in front of them in a small parade. Steam curled up into the air, carrying the smell of garlic and tomato and fresh herbs. They ate. Claire twirled pasta around her fork, the sauce touching her tongue with a familiarity that settled somewhere low in her chest. She listened as Eleanor told a story about a student from her library days who had tried to hide overdue books behind a potted plant. Mia added her own commentary, having heard the story before, but still finding new angles to mock. At one point, Louise leaned toward Claire. "They look happy," he said quietly, nodding toward the two women on the other side of the table. "They are," Claire said. "So do you," he said. She held his gaze for a moment. "I feel like myself," she said, "or at least like someone I might want to know." He smiled at that, slow and genuine. After dinner, plates pushed back and coffee cups on the table, they lingered. Eleanor insisted on paying the tip-fishing exact bills from her wallet, with the focus of a magician. Mia tried to argue, and gave up when Eleanor narrowed her eyes in a way that suggested decades of winning similar battles. When they finally stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sky had shifted to a deep blue. Streetlights cast soft pools of yellow on the pavement. The air was cool but not sharp. From this angle, Claire could see a slice of Northbridge Tower down the block. Its windows glowed in patches. People still moved inside small shapes behind glass. She did not look at it long. Instead, she watched Mia in the light of the restaurant window as her sister helped Eleanor with her jacket. She watched Louise step aside to give them space, his hands in his pockets, his breath visible in small clouds. Someone opened the restaurant door behind them. Warmth spilled out for a second, along with a burst of music and the clink of a plate. Then the door closed again, leaving them in the softer sounds of the street. "We will drive Grandma home," Mia said. "You and Louise should walk. You probably need to gossip about us." "That was the plan," Louise said. Eleanor patted Claire's arm. "Come by tomorrow," she said. "I need you to reach the pots on the top shelf. The doctor said nothing about ladders, but I will behave." "I will be there," Claire said. They watched as Mia helped Eleanor into the back seat of a rideshare car. The driver loaded the oxygen tank carefully, a wave through the window, a last look. Then the car pulled away, taillights shrinking as it merged into traffic. For a moment, Claire and Louise stood side by side on the sidewalk, watching the flow of people and cars. "You want to walk a bit?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. They fell into step together, turning away from the tower, away from the bright sign, toward a quieter street that angled down toward the water. Windows glowed in the buildings they passed. Some showed the flicker of a television. Some framed people at tables with books and plates. Some were dark shades drawn. Claire felt the rectangle of Louise's card in her coat pocket, softened edges from months of being moved from one jacket to another. It shared space now with a folded brochure from New Zealand, a grocery list with Eleanor's handwriting, a receipt from the Aquarium Cafe. Her phone stayed where it was silent, screen dark. As they walked, the sounds of the city settled around them. A dog barked somewhere. A ship's horn sounded low and long out on the sound. Their footsteps tapped a steady rhythm on the concrete. Claire did not know what would come in a year or 5 or 10. There were no charts for this, no slides, no projections. There was this evening, the echo of her grandmother's laugh still in her ears, the knowledge that Mia would text when she got home, the awareness of Louise's shoulder a comfortable distance from her own. At the corner they paused for a light. Across the street, a row of apartments faced them, windows shining. In one, a family sat at a table, heads bent toward one another, hands moving as they talked. The scene was small and contained framed perfectly in glass. Claire watched them for a second without the old ache of being on the outside. "Ready?" Louise asked. She nodded. They crossed when the signal changed, moving toward whatever waited inside the small circles of light ahead. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.